customer interactions. We are also going to show you how this works. So we will walk you through a Google Cloud CCAI bot building process. And lastly, we're going to tie it all off with real-life use cases that highlights the benefits of AI-powered conversational bots. If time permits, we will have a roundtable discussion with any questions that are added into the chat session. A few house rules. So after the webinar is complete, you will be receiving the recording of the session, and you will also be receiving a link to the survey. So if you could take a couple minutes to fill that out, that would be great. Next slide. So as I mentioned in the beginning, we are fortunate to have two industry leaders as part of this webinar. I would first like to introduce Kane. Kane is a voice conversational AI and NLP expert with over 12 years of experience in digital transformation. He has helped leading enterprises save costs, increase revenue, and improve CX with bleeding-edge conversational AI and NLU technologies across all conversational channels. He is also currently the co-founder and AI consultant at VUX World. Larry brings a wealth of knowledge also around how to actually make this work within an enterprise organization. He has over 24 years of experience focused on customer experience and contact center technology. He spent over half his career consulting for organizations, including Accenture and Nuance. And currently he serves as Chief Solutions Architect and CCAS leader for Servion. So we're really excited about hearing insights from both Larry and Kane. So with that being said, I'll hand it over to you, Kane.
Thank you very much, Eric. Appreciate it. So I'm just going to, I think I might need to be made host of this thing, or if not, I think if we stop sharing slides, hopefully you might be able to see me a little bit better. Let me know when you can see what's going on my screen. But thank you for that introduction, Eric. That was very nice. I appreciate it. Yeah, for those of you that are tuning in, thank you for doing so. I'm going to walk through, some kind of like reasons why conversational AI and voice AI in particular is the next interface, essentially, the kind of next computing interface, the next customer engagement interface. And then we're going to step through some of the kind of like real challenges that enterprises see when they try and implement this technology, with some pointers for how you might be able to kind of like not avoid those pitfalls, essentially, when you get started. So I just want to check, Eric, are you seeing me now? Is that all good? Yeah,
I can see you perfectly.
Perfect, cool. All right, so let's start at a very high level. Let's zoom right the way out. And if we look at over time in human civilization history, we developed language apparently when we were building these tools. This is a hand axe from the Paleolithic era. This is like 150,000 years old plus, and apparently that is where language creation started, and it started as a way of communicating between groups of people and organizing ourselves. So you might be thinking, well, what relevance does that have to contact center AI? Essentially, language is absolutely fundamental to being human. It is one of the absolute fundamental baseline requirements almost, is that if you compare humans to any other animal or any other species on the planet, our advanced language is the thing that allows us to organize ourselves and the thing that allows us to transmit information beyond ourselves, our own brains, and down past through the generations. It's one of the unique things about being human. And also, first examples of written language was these kind of like cave drawings, and this is like the first example of writing stuff down in order to communicate. And that advanced, as we know, this is an example of an old Hebrew Bible. This is about 1500 years old, and it doesn't really matter what religion you subscribe to. All of the kind of major religions have these texts that date back thousands of years, and the human civilization's language and ability to communicate advanced so much that we were able to put information in books like this that have stood the test of time over generations and over thousands of years. And it was even used in the 1700s and even before that as a core part of trading. Now, most of you tuning in today, you work at an organization. Chances are that business has services or products to sell, and essentially all that is a communication between two entities, very much the same way as it was in the 1700s and before that, a negotiation between two parties. And it's kind of the same even today. If you go to a supermarket or you go to a shop, the transaction that's occurring is an agreement, usually based on language between two individuals. And over time, what we've seen is that technologies began to mediate or begun to mediate a lot of that interaction and began to mediate a lot of that communication. So in the same way as, you know, the hunter-gatherers, when they were creating those hand axes, used to use language to communicate amongst themselves, computers have evolved to enable us to communicate amongst ourselves and beyond borders as well. In the same way as those cave drawings and those kind of religious scriptures and all that kind of stuff was a way of passing information down through the generations, technology is what we now use to pass information down through the generations. And so with the advent of computing, we've then got this kind of technological underpinning within all of our human to human and human to business interactions. But the fundamental problem with computers like this, I mean, this one is one of the very old mainframe computers, and all these cables and stuff coming out of here, it's just unwieldy. The big problem with these kind of machines is that they don't speak our language. We have to learn to speak their language. This is an example of an old punch card. That was how you got information in and out of computers. The interface that we used to use to communicate with these computers was absolutely terrible, the most unnatural way of communicating possible. And then these things were created. You've got the original Apple, one of the original Windows PCs, and that was a huge leap forward, and it gave businesses a whole bunch of capabilities that they didn't have. It put computing in the hands of the home, which is fantastic. But the problem is, again, the interface. Look at this. This is the old mouse and the keyboard, and we had to learn to use that, and courses were actually taught on how to use these machines. This is how you use a mouse. This is how you use a keyboard. This is how you use an operating system. And what came with that was actually the first wave of exclusion, technology exclusion. There was a bunch of people that either couldn't afford these computers, couldn't afford the internet, didn't know how to work them, and all of a sudden a portion of the population is kind of cut out from the ability to be able to access information, and over time, as it kind of grows and the internet grows, to be able to transact and access services as well. Then what we did is we created mobile, which again, very good. We've now got, you know, far more computing power in the palm of our hands than we ever did have on our desktop computers. And again, the interface changed again. Interfaces, human computer interfaces, tend to change around about every 10 to 15 years. And with mobile phones, it was the first time we ever had a reliable touchscreen and a reliable way of actually using touch. So now it changed from keyboards and mice to touching and tapping and swiping. But again, we had to use the language of the machine. The machine couldn't understand us. And that's been the fundamental problem of human computer interaction over the last 50, 60 years, ever since computers were created, is that we've had to bend over backwards to learn how to speak the computer's language, and the computer couldn't speak our language. Cue the introduction of these devices here. You've probably all got one. You've probably either know someone who has one. Smart speakers. These were the first devices that were ever created purposefully to be spoken to. The first devices that were ever had their primary interface as a speech or voice interface. Now, they're not exactly new. This technology has been in development since the Voda, since 1939. Even actually before that, that was the first speech synthesized system. Audrey was one of the first natural language understanding systems. And then it kind of evolved over the years, but most people will probably know something like Drag and Dictate, Naturally Speaking. And that was, you know, speech technology as it was advancing was getting pretty good, but it was always confined to this accessibility use case. It was always seen as an accessible add-on rather than a core kind of function of an operating system, until we saw Siri on the iPhone and Google Assistant and Cortana and finally Amazon Alexa in 2014. That was the start really of widespread adoption of voice user interfaces, using your voice and natural language in order to communicate with technology. Now, why is that important? Well, it's because what we're noticing here is that the rise of these technologies is making using your voice and using natural language normalized. It's for the first time we're getting comfortable and we're getting used to talking to machines. And the impact of that, and the reason, partly the reason why it's becoming so prominent, is because of the accuracy levels of the technology. It's really improving and has been improving over the years. This is Google. When Google Now first launched, Google speech recognition was only understanding 76% of words that it was able to record. Fast forward just 5 years, and the Google speech recognition system is able to understand at 95% accuracy. That's arguably higher than human fidelity. Now, albeit there's limitations around the conditions, it needs to be a clean audio signal, but the technology is improving nevertheless. We've also seen tremendous advancements in kind of deep learning technologies and machine learning technologies. I won't go into the details of a neural net like this, but essentially this technology has enabled us to create language models that understand text a lot better. So we've got speech technology improving, which is able to take audio and translate that into text. And we've got the natural language understanding technology improving, which is able to extract meaning from that text. Both of those two things combined have given rise to all of these voice assistants and voice user interfaces that we see today. And so for the very first time ever, arguably, consistently, at scale, over the world, all over the world, computers are able to actually speak our language. And that is why conversational interfaces are so interesting for users, customers, and so interesting for businesses as well. So as we see technology evolve and we see everything get connected, you know, your home gets connected, everything's hanging off the back of your mobile device, your glasses are even connected, and everything starts to talk to each other. Your bank's plugged in, your insurance company's plugged in, and all of this stuff starts to join together. The overarching interface for all of this is natural language. And you're starting seeing that already with even the house robots that you're seeing starting to emerge. They're all controlled by natural language. I saw Mark Zuckerberg speak on a podcast the other week talking about the metaverse. The primary interface for the metaverse will be natural language. And the primary way that most customers engage with most businesses is on a natural language based channel. It's either over the phone, it's on your website, a lot of live chat we're seeing now, it's over SMS or WhatsApp, it's over social media, emails. Every single channel that we have available is based on natural language. And so it's no wonder then why at one point in time smart speakers were arguably the fastest growing technology since the smartphone. They got to 50 million users quicker than the smartphone did. And people are using it. So the technology is improving. There's huge opportunities there, but people are actually using it as well. This here is actually a conservative number. This is to say that in the US, 50% of people use voice assistants on their mobile phone. I've seen this a lot higher than this. I've seen studies looking at 70% and higher than that still. And so Statista is predicting that by 2024, we're going to see 8.4 billion voice assistants in use. Now that can be a voice enabled app, it could be a voice enabled call center, it could be voice assistant on your website, it could be these kind of like digital assistants that we see popping up in smart speakers and things like that. 8.4 billion, that's more than there is humans on the planet. And the adoption, not just of smart speakers, but of conversational interfaces is rising tremendously. Salesforce saw a 600% increase in messages sent on the Salesforce messaging platform Einstein in 2021. And Microsoft saw the exact same. In the first 3 months of 2021, Microsoft Azure bot framework sent 4 billion messages. That's a 400% increase in usage. And so customers are using these channels. We're seeing a lot around the expectations from customers around customer service. Inevitably, customer service is important, especially in this day and age where a lot of products and services are actually kind of the same. If you make cars, if you sell products, if you're a retailer, if you're an insurance provider, a bank, a lot of these things, healthcare providers still, a lot of these actual products and services are very hard to differentiate on their own. And the customer service element, the customer experience element is really what you're differentiating on these days. Here's some stats from Salesforce. A positive customer service experience makes me more likely to make another purchase. 91% of people think that's the case. I'll forgive a company for a mistake after receiving excellent service. And so we're seeing that customer service and customer experience is becoming increasingly important. Convenience is king. People absolutely want convenience. People will prioritize. If you average this out, it's around about 70% of people will prioritize convenience over the actual brand. So not only are your products and services becoming very similar to your competition, but your brand itself is becoming less important when compared to the benefits of customer service, customer experience, and convenience. People are expecting self-service. 59% of people already serve themselves. But look at this underneath here. Chatbots for simple customer service. Who would be interested in doing that? 43% of people are already using chatbots for self-service, and a further 27% of people will be interested in doing the same. That's 70% potentially of your target customers that are either currently using chatbots elsewhere or will be interested in trying your chatbot. So what we have here is a perfect mix of technology readiness. The technology has improved tremendously over the years, and customer need alignment. that people are already adopting these digital assistants on their phone. They're already using chatbots. Expectations are being raised. When you talk to Google Assistant and Amazon Alexa and you understand what it's like to use your voice to liaise with a business, expectations placed on other businesses start to change. In the same way as your expectations of what a good search function looks like was based on your experience of searching on Google, so too your experience of what it's like to interact with an AI assistant is going to be based on the best-in-class assistants. And so we have businesses now seeing the value, and they're a little bit like this. A lot of businesses, when they hear about this technology, they get really excited and they think this is kind of like a dream come true. The ability to be able to automate conversations at scale is absolutely unbelievable. And so it should be, because this technology can solve some real business challenges. You've got the main challenges in the contact center. Most of you probably work in a contact center. This study was done by Contact Center Pipeline. The top 3 challenges in call centers right now: hiring difficulty, increased workload, and high attrition. So it's impossible to manage the workload that you have ongoing right now. People are leaving the job because of it, and at the same time you can't recruit. So AI assistants, I fully believe that because of this and a number of other factors, that we're going to see AI assistants being the front door to most organizations across most channels. Because most of your touch points are already conversational endpoints, there's nothing stopping an AI assistant from mediating that initial conversation. And I think that's where we're going to end up, is that an AI is going to be the front door to the vast majority of businesses. And Juniper reckon that chatbots alone, this is not voice bots, this is just chatbots on websites, will save 2.5 billion customer service hours by 2023. To put that into some kind of context, right, that's the equivalent of 856,000 people working 8 hours a day every single day for an entire year without taking a day off. That's how much capacity this technology is able to save. And it's been backed up tremendously by the investment markets. There was $2.8 billion. This is a proprietary study that we did at VUX World, looking at the amount of investment put into this technology. $2.8 billion was raised by just 42 companies in 2021. And most of it's going to the platform providers, conversational AI platform providers, call center providers, and speech recognition providers. So there's huge confidence in the investor market. There's real business challenges that this technology can solve. There's already customer behavior and customer adoption turning into customer expectations, and the technology has improved and is ready for prime time. Having said that, it's easier said than done. So there's a lot of kind of expectations, or I think lack of understanding, broadly speaking, amongst businesses about how they should go about doing this kind of thing. It's not a black box solution that you can press a button and it will just work. There's a little bit more to it. And so I'm going to step through some of the core challenges that I've observed over the last decade or decade of digital transformation, but half decade of implementing these conversational AI systems, some of the big pitfalls that I see organizations making and how you can avoid them. So first and foremost, let's go this way. There's 5 types of challenges. There's organizational challenges. That's related to kind of culture and the way that organizations run themselves. There's strategic challenges in terms of how you approach the implementation of a program like this. There's design challenges, how you create the actual interface and the customer experience. Technical challenges around how you technically develop this and bring this to market. And then ongoing maintenance challenges, which is around how you kind of scale and continue to grow your experiences beyond that. So first of all, organizational challenges. You've got, I mentioned it, I touched on it earlier on, inflated expectations. That's the first thing that most business leaders have, is they think that AI is a black box that is going to solve the whole world's problems. In fact, it's not really like that. It takes a lot of time and effort to get it up and running. An over-reliance on cost savings. Most businesses, there is inevitable opportunity for potential cost savings, but whether they are cashable savings, as in you implement a bot today and you lay off 15 members of staff tomorrow, that's still up for debate. We've seen the challenges in the contact center. We've got difficulty recruiting. We've got overworked staff. And bots and AI assistants are there to alleviate some of that workload, lighten the load on your current staff, improve customer experience, reduce call wait times, reduce call volume, reduce the length of time it takes for an agent to serve a call. It's not all about hard cash savings. It's also about customer experience and some of those other business metrics as well. You've got buy-in and support. Lack of buy-in in support is one of the biggest reasons why things fail, because these programs take a lot more than a developer in an IT team building and churning something out. They take a whole cross-organization approach, from marketing to customer service, customer experience, innovation, digital transformation, IT, design. All of these different areas need to be working together to bring something to market that's going to be a success. Leaders often insist on guarantees. we want to see this bot handling 80% of our calls. We want to see this thing taking, X percentage of our demand away. And you can kind of get to those numbers, but when you first start out, it is an exploration journey, and you need to figure it out, because some use cases are going to be more complex than others. Some might be handed over to a live agent. Some you might want to be handed over to a live agent. There's a whole bunch of things that need to be figured out. And so I would say that when you first start, try and learn and use it as a learning journey to build up your maturity. And guarantees are quite hard to come by because it's quite a complex thing. Siloed teams, you've got individual teams working on different things. I've seen organizations that have marketing working on one bot, they've got IT working on a different bot, or you've got subject matter experts that are not involved in the content, and it's even though it's their area of expertise. And so you absolutely have to have cross-functional teams. Some tips on this one: be realistic, vary your ROI. It's not all about cashable savings. Definitely involve the right people early. Adopt a learning mentality, because it is a journey. Once you put it live, it's not going to go anywhere. It's like a mobile app or a website. It's going to exist. The difference is people are actually talking to it, so you can't just leave it there. It needs to be built upon. And put together a cross-discipline team to do it. Some of the strategic challenges: starting with the wrong use case. I've seen so many organizations start with something that's far too complex for the first use case. You want to start with something that's got a relative amount of volume, but not overly complex. Premature vendor selection. I've seen organizations that say that we want a chatbot, so they'll go to a chat platform, and they won't really understand things like who at the organization is going to be actually working on this thing. Is a low-code option a good idea? Have you got a strong team of engineers, and do they already work really well with your design team? And so you can maybe build something yourself. Maybe your framework's a good idea. How varied are your use cases? How varied is the language that you use, that your customers use? Because you might need a different kind of arrangement, and you might have different requirements based on use cases. And if you run to a vendor too early without gathering your requirements, then you may end up finding that you picked the wrong solution, and you end up hitting a bit of a brick wall later on. A lot of organizations and teams are using a waterfall mentality with this stuff, and it's understandable because it's new, and therefore you don't really understand it. You don't understand the technology. You don't understand your requirements. So it's very easy to fall into that waterfall mentality of starting with design and then handing it over to development. The problem with that is that conversational AI relies on end user input. It relies on having actual conversations with customers. And the longer you delay that, the worse off you're going to be, because you're going to build in a whole bank of assumptions into your product, and you're not going to find out whether it's working or not until the very end. So you need to be iterating and using more of an agile approach. There's a distinct lack of vision and direction in a lot of organizations. I've talked about the front-facing point of an organization being an AI within 5 to 10 years. In order to get to that point where you can mobilize all of your channels, you need to have the infrastructure behind the scenes and the vision behind the scenes in order to enable that. I've seen organizations that need a WhatsApp bot, and they will run to a provider that specifically focuses on WhatsApp. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's just that that one platform or that one solution can't be used in chat, can't be used in the call center. And so if you have a more long-term vision about it, and you think about building AI capabilities, it'll stop you getting caught in some of those traps. And a lack of resources is an inherent problem. Conversation designers are like rocking horse teeth or rocking horse, you know what I'm going to say. And so getting the talent in this space is quite hard. And also putting the resource on it. You know, you might have teams to work on it, but you need to actually put them in and assign them to this work, because it won't get done on its own. On the design side, there's a whole bunch of things that go into designing one of these applications. Designers that come from a graphical design background tend to rely on graphical user interface practices, which don't always work in conversation. They tend to be based a lot on assumptions, and assumptions are, when you design a conversation, you're only ever designing one half of it. You need a partner to design the other half, and so you need to rely on data from customers in order to build something. If you don't have any data from customers, you're just basing everything on assumptions, and anyone who's built a conversation or designed a conversation based on assumptions will know that it doesn't always go down as you expect. You have to put user research in place to gather requirements, gather data on customers, gather how people speak, understand the twists and turns of the conversation, creating a personality to make sure that your dialogue is consistent all the way across different use cases and different channels. And the big mistake is that organizations just throw it over the wall. What that means is that they use this waterfall mentality, which is a big design piece up front, and the designers take that and then throw it to the developers and say, build that. And this is symptomatic of the waterfall mentality. And the problem with that is that a designer is trying to communicate how an experience should be, whereas a developer is trying to read how a thing should work. And so without collaboration between those two teams all the time throughout a project, you're going to end up with the end result not being what is intended. Some technical challenges, inherent challenges if you have never worked with this technology before. Speech recognition, a lot of teams just pick an off-the-shelf speech recognition system and run with it. There's nothing wrong with that, but some use cases do require the speech recognition to be trained on certain words and phrases that are specific to your organization. Natural language understanding can be complex, and especially if you don't have any visibility over it or any tools that will show you what's happening in your model. A lot of people that build their model for the first time throw it full of training data and they really don't have a clue how it's actually performing. Dialogue management is a bit of a challenge. There's a lot of low-code tools that can help mediate some of that. CX, which you're going to see in a minute from Larry, is a good option. And I've put down here, I've got data, because one of the biggest failures in the projects that I've seen over the last 5 years is that things start moving without actually understanding whether you have access to the data that you need, access to the APIs that you need. Because if you can't actually deliver a transaction, for example, on the web or in your app, you're not going to be able to deliver that same transaction in a conversational channel. That's the number one reason why most projects end up stalling. A project I was working on recently was stalled for 8 months because there was no API access to a crucial line of business system. So plan those requirements ahead without a shadow of a doubt. Use tools. There's loads of tools for getting NLU model visibility and analytics and things like that. And then very finally, move on because I know Larry's keen to come on and share with you how to do this stuff. On an ongoing basis, one of the challenges is that teams just fire and forget. They put something live and that's the end of it. The reality is, as I mentioned, this is a living thing. It's like employing someone. You don't just employ someone and throw them onto the shop floor. You employ them and you guide them and you train them and you monitor and you encourage and you coach. It's exactly the same thing when it comes to deploying a conversational AI. No analytics is a huge problem. You can't improve something if you can't understand it. You can't understand it unless you've got some analytics running in there. The platforms like Google and stuff like that give you some degree of kind of dashboard, but they don't go deep enough. You might need a different solution to get deeper. A lot of organizations track the wrong metrics. If you're coming from a contact center environment, you're probably used to tracking things like containment rate. That might be a big kind of thing for you, is containment rate. In the land of AI assistance, containment rate doesn't really tell you anything. It doesn't tell you whether somebody got what they need. It doesn't tell you whether it was a successful conversation. It doesn't tell you whether they ducked out early. So there's a whole bunch of other things that you should be looking to measure. Number of successful conversations. Where did users dip out of the conversation and was that expected? Where were users handed over to an agent and was that intended? What's happening to your call queue? Is your queue decreasing? Is the number of average handling time for agents decreasing? There's a whole bunch of other metrics that you can use to judge the success of this thing on. And finally, people give up too soon. There's the guy called David Lowe. He works at Oracle. He was working on the Beeb BBC Assistant. He was ex-Amazon Alexa, ex-Skyscanner. And his phrase is, if you build something once, be prepared to build it twice. Because most of the time when you launch something for the first time, it ends up going wrong. And so be prepared to build it twice. What most organizations do is they will launch something and it won't work and they'll give up on it. I've covered already in the last 20 minutes or so some of the pitfalls, and 9 times out of 10, when things go wrong, it's because something in that process was skipped or missing or hasn't been done properly. So if you do launch something and it doesn't go so well, don't give up on it. Just examine it and analyze it and improve it. And so in summary, I would say that without a shadow of a doubt, customers are ready for this. The technology is ready for this. The business absolutely needs it. And it is entirely possible to do that. It's entirely possible to do it in-house if you're willing to learn and go on the journey. And it's entirely possible to get help from outside, like Servion, if you do need assistance to go on that journey as well. So with that, I'll hand over to Larry. And Larry, you can take us through how to actually go about building one of these things with CCAI.
Larry, we're having a tough time hearing you. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Larry. We're having a tough time hearing you.
You guys are having a tough time hearing me. Okay, let me see if I can speak a little bit louder using my mic laptop speakers here. So I'll just try to speak as loud as I can. So on deck, we're going to take you through a demo of Google's CCAI Dialogflow solution to highlight how easy it is to set up your first bot. So for the purposes of the demo, we opted to show you a use case of a chatbot, really for visual purposes. So let me set this up for you. We wanted to use an example that would resonate with something you might do as a consumer. So imagine a customer has to engage with an organization to schedule an appointment with a department and with a representative within that department. Within the chatbot, the customer can request a specific department representative or be assigned one at random. And we'll assume the customer is already logged into the company system, so all of the information is already known. So without further ado, let's check out the demo.
Suppose you are a business with 3 departments: finance, sales, and technology. Currently, customers need to chat with a live agent representative to schedule appointments with members of the individual departments. You allow scheduling of appointments online, so your backend is set up to take a department, an employee from that department, a date, a time, and a customer ID to schedule that appointment. This appointment is set when your live agent enters in the details provided by the customer. Your business is seeing a lot of traffic on scheduling appointments with departments and wants to consider the option of automating the live chat process against hiring more agents to fulfill the demand. After seeing how easy it is to build automated solutions with Google CCAI, it is a no-brainer to go with the automated solution. In this video, we will be showing a demo of how to construct a simple chat bot for scheduling appointments. In this scenario, we will assume the user is logged into the company's system and their customer ID is known. For this example, we are going to name our virtual agent MyScheduler, host it in the global region, and leave the rest of the settings at their defaults. Under the Management tab, you will find tools to manage an agent's resources, such as intents and entities. You will also find the functionality for third-party integration, testing, and the CI/CD framework. Under the agent settings, you will find settings which apply globally to an agent, such as the NLU model used and thresholds for intent matching. You'll also find things here like security settings. We will now be building a custom entity. Entities are used to extract values from text to be used by backend systems or routing logic within the agent. There are a wide variety of built-in entities for things like dates and names. Here, we will build a custom entity to capture the different departments which a customer can schedule an appointment for. To do this, we head over to the Management tab and click Entity Types. We will create a new custom entity and name it Departments. We can select the entity type, such as regex matching or value-only entities. For our purpose, we will want to use an entity with synonyms. We will specify the 3 available departments: finance, sales, and technology. For each entity value, we will specify synonyms indicating other ways a user may try and indicate they are looking for a department. It is important to note that if a user says a synonym for your entity, the value of the variable will be aliased to the entity value and not the synonym value. For example, if a user says commerce, the value captured will be finance. This helps when designing your backend system so you know which values to expect. We can also select advanced options for things like automatically adding new entities using machine learning or fuzzy matching. We are also free to add values to exclude for this entity to ensure the phrases there will not be captured by this parameter. An intent is used to capture the purpose of what a user is trying to accomplish. An intent requires a name and training phrases. The intent may also have labels, a description, and parameters within its training phrases. We will be creating an intent to capture a customer's desire to set up an appointment with a particular employee in a department for a particular date and time. We will name our intent Schedule Appointment. We will set a label to head intent, although this is not required. Now, the fun part. We will be adding various ways a user can express the desire to schedule an appointment and tag the necessary parameters. We will need parameters for department, date, time, and person. Each parameter will be aliased to an entity, the department to the custom department entity we just created, the date, time, and person all to system entities, each for date, time, and name. Shown are the training phrases, each tagged and highlighted with a different color. Those colors correspond to parameter IDs, which are made up of entity types, as seen in the table below. Now we will be creating a head intent route. Back in the Visual Builder, we'll use our newly created intent to build this route. We will create a route which exists on the start page, indicating it should be run when a user triggers the schedule appointment intent. This will then bring a user to a new page we create called Appointment Scheduler. Now that we have defined a head intent route for the schedule appointment functionality, it is time to add in capture parameters to the appointment scheduler page. These parameters will consist of all the required parameters needed for a customer to book an appointment with a department member. We use the same parameter names as in our schedule appointment intent to enable slot filling. Slot filling is the process of dynamically filling in parameters depending on the context the user has already provided. We want to order our parameters logically. We need to know the department to know the people available in that department, and we need to know which staff member in that department to determine the particular time slot that is available. For this, we do department, then person, then date, then time. For each parameter, we will define the prompt of what the bot asks the user when trying to extract this information. We'll also define no match events for each parameter. This defines what happens when a user provides an answer to a parameter that the agent cannot understand. This can be done on a flow, page, and parameter level. Here, we show the completed appointment scheduler page architecture. This includes the department, person, date, and time parameters, in that order. Each parameter has user prompts and no match handlers. Now that we have all the necessary information from a customer to schedule their appointment, we route based on availability of that appointment. We will send them to a different page depending on if that appointment is available or not. If a requested appointment is available, we will send a customer to the confirmation page to let them know their appointment is booked. If a requested appointment is unavailable, we will send them to an unavailable suggestions page. An appointment is determined to be available or not based on a call to a back-end system. If an appointment is not available, that system sends back recommended appointments based on the user's original inputs. Here, we will show the entire architecture of the Dialogflow CX agent in the Visual Builder. Intents and routes were added to incorporate the functionality of changing an appointment date or person if the requested appointment is unavailable, asking the user if they would like anything else once their appointment is confirmed, and confirming customers who changed their original appointment time or person. In the first test scenario, a user provides all the necessary information to the bot to book their appointment. This may be indicative of a user who has used the system before. Their appointment is open and confirmed. In the second scenario, the user provides the name of the person they would like to speak with and the date, but they still need to provide the time and the department. They are prompted for the department and the time. This appointment is open and the user is confirmed. They have no further inquiries. In the last scenario, a user provides the bot with only their intent to book an appointment. They do not know their department, so the no match logic kicks in, giving them their options. The user then indicates they would like to set an appointment with the sales department and a woman named Mary. When prompted for the date, the user sends both the date and time. This is not a problem for slot filling. Both are captured and the user is not prompted for the time as they have already provided it. This time is not available for the user. They are given other time options for Mary or to meet with another person named Alex at the requested time. The user selects to meet with Alex and the appointment is confirmed. The user has no further inquiries. Now let's say you have the first draft of your bot up and running. You analyze your data and find that users take relatively similar journeys a high percentage of the time. You want to ensure that before each new release, the core functionality is still working. With Dialogflow CX, you are able to save a test case and run it before each release. You can then review the results of your test cases to see if or where things may have gone wrong and make the appropriate changes before pushing to production.
So for those that followed along there, fairly straightforward, all things considered, I would say. For some of you may have had a difficult time seeing that very closely. For me, it was a little bit small. Just for all the participants here, we will be making the demo and video in the deck available. So you'll have an opportunity to take a closer look at how to build your own bot. On that note, we don't want to oversimplify, as you got to hear from Kane, the science behind building a good bot, right? And one of the things that's most critical in my experience when you deploy a new bot is understanding immediately, how is that bot performing, right? And there's a number of different ways that you can go about doing that. There are some tools within a lot of these platforms that will give you some analytics and insight, oftentimes because, bots are often designed specifically to an organization. Some of those tools may not be overly valuable. So what we typically like to see is for you to build your own reporting and dashboards and analytics into your own bot, so you can isolate the different areas that you want to pay particularly close attention to. Understanding your customer, right, and their behavioral trends, if there's some different patterns that you can pick up, all those types of insights are especially critical in the very early going when it comes to deploying a new bot, right? We think we know our customers. We may know our own products a certain way. Our customers may know them a different way. It's important to try to isolate those things in the bot in the early going and really have a plan to how to get those addressed, right? If there are certain areas of the bot where people are getting held up or points where they get stuck and have to go backwards, or frankly, if they often result in having to opt out of the bot or get to a transfer point, those are particular areas of focus. Probably the biggest lesson and recommendation I can give is that it is critical. The bot is continuously trained and tuned and tested and retested, especially in the early going. And it's really important to, properly set your expectations, right? This is something that you're going to kind of grow into over time. You're going to learn more about your customers. You're going to understand how they engage with you. And there are ways that you can then improve the bot over the course of time. Oftentimes, those first few weeks or months can be a little bit rocky, but don't let that discourage you. So other opportunities too for exploring bot performance, right? Sentiment analysis, right? Some of the tools also have these capabilities built within the platforms, but really, engaging with bots isn't for everybody. Sometimes people get stuck. Sometimes people get frustrated. This is newer technology, and there's going to be a period for some folks to have to adopt this type of technology. So understanding that sentiment, and if you find a frustrated customer, what kind of action you can take in order to get them out of there. Those are important things. Certainly the testing piece as well as using tools like surveys, getting feedback from customers on how the experience was, right? Ultimately, these are very valuable tools for organizations that can really deflect calls out of speaking to direct humans and allow people to get their answers themselves. So, it's important for you to, recognize how your customers are engaging with those and be prepared to continuously improve the bot. So on that note, let's talk a little bit about tuning the bot, right? Again, I can't really emphasize this anymore. One of the first things I would recommend is really identify what is success for you and monitor to that success, right? And that's going to be different for everybody, right? If it's bots can be very effective self-servicing tools, right? A lot of times people are reluctant to even speak to humans, right? They want to be able to get their own answers themselves. So whether it's a return on investment, whether it's allowing people to successfully get their answers, call deflection out of the contact centers, right? Identify what is success to you when it comes to this bot and just be realistic, right? This is something that should improve over time. So don't be frustrated if it's slow in coming. You would collect those bot transcripts, really get insight into how people are engaging, where people are getting stuck. If there are certain, synonyms being used, right? You try to understand your customers and how they know you as a business. Oftentimes they will say things that they think you should understand. And those are opportunities to continue to expand upon your intents in the bot and various entities and synonyms that you can continue to grow over the course of time. Your historical data, that's going to be critical, right? To learn from the past and improve the bot for the future. And, really understanding your customers, right? When you go into the journey of adopting AI and bot technology, you try to put yourself in the eyes of the customer and design solutions for them. But oftentimes that's not reality, right? So it's important to really understand in reality how your customers are engaging with this bot. And another thing to really emphasize, and I know Kane touched upon this as well, but be ready for supporting this bot the moment it is put live. Have an organization in place, have a partner that you're working with that can be there. Understand that first day, in those first few weeks, it's a continuous learning process as the bot continues to learn and train over the course of time. So I cannot emphasize that anymore. Now, once you get comfortable and your customers get comfortable with engaging with, a voice bot or a chat bot, there's opportunities to really grow into how an organization uses these tools and technologies, right? Obviously the self-servicing piece, right? We know that the world we're living in today, where attrition and retention and customer training and a lot of these other challenges exist in the contact center space. I've certainly experienced that myself here recently when it comes to excessively long hold times. It would be nice to be able to engage with something where I could get my answers myself. The prevalence of these bots, you're going to begin seeing these more and more over the course of time. Once you dabble, identify, a reasonable use case that makes sense, that's going to add some value to your organization, but continue to grow in your strategy, right? There's a lot of different areas where this technology can benefit your business and benefit customers, and continue to grow in that journey here. There's also the opportunity to start off in one particular bot channel and then transition that to another, right? So the evolution of how you can use this technology is really broad. It's not easy, but if done effectively and well, your customers will enjoy engaging with you as a business, and ultimately that's the goal here. And certainly there are outreach and upsell opportunities when it comes to how you leverage bot technology. So let's see, next slide.
That was great, Larry. Oh, you got one more? Perfect.
Yeah, just one of the takeaways when the folks here walk away from this is, if you're early part of your natural language and AI and bot journey, companies like Servion are here to help, right? We offer a number of different services. You can see here on this slide here, there's an email that you can go to if you want to engage with Servion for a free consultation, right? We offer a broad range of consulting opportunities, capturing current customer conversations and studying how those are serviced, exploring existing process and business requirements, and identifying your top intents. The actual development, the technical skills that go into building the bot. I know that the demo perhaps simplified. Building a bot didn't seem overly difficult, but it's all of the other stuff, frankly, that is critical to get right. And then obviously the rollout process, and then the ongoing tuning process, right? Similar to an employee, this bot needs to continuously learn and improve over time. So all of those end-to-end services are things that are offered through Servion if you do need some help along. So on that note, let me turn it back to Eric.
Yeah, thanks so much for that, Larry. That was great, and it was great to see kind of some real life use cases also. So I know we only have 5 minutes left, but we've sure learned a lot of valuable insights from Kane and Larry on how to build a no-code AI bot with Google CCAI. Kane, I really enjoyed the metaverse reference and how it's going to be driven by voice. I've heard that over and over again, and it's funny how this next wave of metaverse and voice have come back around. And also really agreed on your push for automation in the call center due to staffing challenges. We continue to hear that over and over again from our clients. So we've only got a couple minutes left here for the fireside chat. There was quite a few questions that came in, but one that came in repeatedly and maybe Kane, you can jump on this one, is how do I measure the success of a bot? I know you and Larry touched on it, but I'd love to hear from your perspective how you measure the success of a bot.
Absolutely, yeah. The success needs to be tied to what are the business drivers in the first place, I would always say. There's some very detailed metrics that we can go to, which I'll get to, and Larry's kind of touched on it as well. But fundamentally, assistants don't come into being for no reason. They come into being because they're there to solve a very specific challenge. So we mentioned some of the challenges in both of our talks around high levels of attrition and high demand on current call center staff, difficulties recruiting, things like that. if that's the reason for you implementing this bot, if it's there to lighten the load of your staff, then you need to find a metric somewhere that you can point to say this is working. So how many calls do the agents handle on a daily basis? How long are those calls? How many people do you have working at any one time on these calls? How many people are waiting in the queue? How long is that kind of your call wait times currently? All of those kind of things can be indicators that if you can reduce all of those numbers, reduce the number of calls getting to a live agent, reduce the average handling time, reduce the average call wait time, those can be indicators that you're having some success and that things are going really well. In terms of the actual bot implementation itself, I kind of alluded to some of that stuff, is that rather than looking at containment, you want to be looking for some specific indicators of what I call highly successful conversations. Has a user reached an intent that you would define as kind of like an end intent of a conversation? If they have, you can say we've served this customer. Maybe the result is that they've actually taken on a service, so they've made an API call to a line of business system, which is to make a payment or whatever it might be. You can judge that as a successful conversation. And then some of the things that Larry touched on as well, which is at what point is it handing over to an agent, and is that happening in the right place? If it's not, then that's an indicator that the conversation is not highly successful. Are people dropping out at any other point in time as well? So I would say start very high level and from the business drivers. Why are you doing this thing, and how can you tie the bot performance back to an actual business driver? And then from within the actual bot itself, there's a number of different indicators that you can use, including highly successful conversations, agent transfer, and things like that. But Larry, I'm interested to see if you've got any other pointers on that one.
I think you captured it, Kane. It's probably really good advice to start broad and then really get to more granular.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, those are things that we hear over and over again. So those are great reminders for the folks, because I know that was a question that came through a few times. So it looks like we're up against time here. So I want to thank you, Kane and Larry, again for your time today. It was really some insightful data points, and then also the questions from the audience too were helpful, but I know a lot of it was covered within the material. Just a couple reminders, please complete the survey. You'll get the recording of the webinar. I'll get a link to that. And more importantly, as Larry mentioned, challenge your organization to identify a first use case for conversational AI. And then also feel free to invest the time on your side for the 1 hour free consultation. That might be another good place to start. So with that being said, thank you again, Larry and Kane, for your time, and I hope everyone has a great rest of the day. Thank you.